On behalf of the mission, Innovation Mission Punjab, I welcome you to another masterclass by Jessie Paul. A quick introduction about what she does, and it's a privilege to have her on board for us to be doing this. I'll have a quick introduction about her, but just a bit about the mission for everyone who's joining in for the first time. We're a mission set up to boost the entrepreneur ecosystem in Punjab. And through these masterclasses and a series of webinars and other initiatives, we're actually trying to build knowledge across and boost up the knowledge on entrepreneurship, some basic questions and some basic understanding on why and how you should market your brand, your startups, businesses, how you should market yourself, and so on and so forth. We'll have these questions open. But before this, our first masterclass, for all of you who are joining this for the second time, it was a great success, and we would like you to maintain a bit of engagement and feel free to post questions so that we can kind of make it more engaging and add value to what we're doing today. That's from the mission. And towards the end of the mission, we will drop in a feedback form. We'll send it across. We'd love to know how it went for you and how we can improvise further and further topics of discussion. And of course, follow us on social media for rest of the updates. I'll move on and speak a little about Jessie. A few words might not do justice, so bear with me, and I'm sure she can take over the rest and explain in the dynamic world of marketing and how this has been built over years. So she's an entrepreneur, investor, board member, and a marketing leader with about 26 years of experience across strategy and modern marketing. Jessie Paul has helped grow organizations from startup stage to global scale. She advises companies on their digital evolution so that they can reach customers in a new tech-enabled ecosystem while building them on how to maximize scaling with their go-to-market and positioning. She's also the founder of Paul Writer, a marketing consultancy firm that helps global and Indian clients with branding, positioning, and customer outreach. Her clients include Adobe, Happiest Minds, Indeed, Microsoft, Oracle, and Wipro. She was a global brand manager of Infosys during its hectic 10x growth era. So I think there's a lot for us to learn from here. And headed marketing for challenger brand Quintent. And she was also the chief marketing officer of Wipro Technologies for 5 years, during which it quadrupled its revenue to about 4 billion. She's also an independent director on board of multiple companies, organizations. Her first book, No Money Marketing, From Upstart to Big Brand on Frugal Budget, was a business bestseller in India. Her new book, which is Marketing Without Money, is also a great book, and we do recommend you to kind of go through the read, and I'm sure she's going to touch upon a few of the basics from the book during our masterclass. So that's a lot of it packed in about 3 minutes of introduction, but I'm sure during the session, she'll have a lot more to show in terms of what practical and in terms of theoretical we can pick up and kind of utilize and imbibe in your everyday businesses and grow your startups.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessie.
Thanks. That was a lovely introduction, and I'm sorry it was so long, actually. Yeah, so today we're going to just talk a little bit about some of the concepts of marketing and how, you don't always have to spend a ton of money to have successful brand. And what are the principles which you can use to actually disproportionately get value? So I agree that you can't do it with zero money, but usually the trade-off is between time and money. So if you don't have money, but you invest quality time, then you can see results. So what it means is that you may not be able to pay for advertising, you may not be able to outsource to an agency, but in that case, you can do it yourself, and that's how you're going to see the returns. So what I'm going to do today is kind of walk you through some of the theories, some of the frameworks that work for me and my clients. And to keep it conversational, I mean, at any point, just post in a question and say, look, I disagree with you, or you're saying this, but I'm having this particular problem in my business and this does not address that. And, or what did you mean when you said this, right? So I'm fine to, keep the chat window open. And so Priya has volunteered to read out the questions. So, let's keep it super, interactive. And I should mention that, post your questions in the Q&A, that's fine. Supriya will pick it up and read it out to me, because when I'm presenting, I can't always see the question. And I do actually cover some of these questions as well during the session. So we'll maybe get started with the session, and then, you keep asking questions. So the first one is, how important is it to invest in the brand strategy? I think it's super, super important, and I do cover that. So let me just start. Great. So I hope you guys can see my screen. If not, speak up. Otherwise, I'm going to start. And so this is called brand hacking for growth. And just 1 second. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So the first way in which we can build a brand and do it economically is by sticking by one stance that really stands out. The more things we like to do, the more money we have to spend, because every time we have to communicate something that costs time and money. So the more you stick with one stance, and that's that one thing that you do, it is much easier. Now you might say, hey, but I do two things. So I sell pet food, but I also sell pet accessories. Yes, but you're going to have to build a brand around a single theme. So maybe you're a one-stop shop for pets, and that's your single message. You will have to find a single stance on which you do this. And if that means saying no to some opportunity that comes your way, you would have to do this. The picture up here is Colin Kaepernick, who Nike went with when they were having the protests. And this was Nike's line. And it actually is very good for marketing as well, because no brand can stand for everything. So you've got to choose what you actually stand for. The second nice example I have is ID Foods. It's huge in the South, particularly. They do dosa batters, and now they have a whole bunch of ready-to-eat parathas. They have the whole thing. And they also now have filter coffee, everybody can. And unlike a lot of other brands, they differentiate not by the actual product, which you could make at home, but by the packaging. So they've made it super convenient for you to use this particular product. And they differentiate because they just have this amazing packaging that stands out. And we'll talk a little bit about this in a bit, where it's not just the product that can be differentiated. You could just differentiate on packaging as well. Third example I just wanted to share was this one. And, there's a basic t-shirt. There's one with the Lacoste logo. There's one with the Polo Ralph Lauren logo. And there's one with the Prada logo. It is exactly the same t-shirt. But, I'm going to come into the Q&A window in a bit, but which one would you pay more for? So I'm just going to stop sharing and come to the Q&A window and just ask people, or in the chat window, which one would you pay the most for? Ralph Lauren, okay. Plain t-shirt, Ralph Lauren, Lacoste, Prada. Yeah, okay. Nobody wants a plain t-shirt which says nothing. Okay. So I'm going to go back to my deck. And the thing is that, right? I mean, why do you want to pay more for one brand over the other? Because there is some value that is attached to the brand, and you respect that, right? So that is actually the main issue, is that you consider one brand superior because of its storytelling, because you guys know, right? It's the same thing, but you're willing to pay more because Prada or Ralph Lauren or Lacoste has a prestige attached to it, which the plain t-shirt doesn't. And that is the essence of branding. So I don't have to differentiate on price, but because I have a story behind my brand, you prefer my brand. Now, some of the examples that were sent to me, like there's one on Ayurveda, there's one on pet medication, there's one on beauty. In any of these, you don't actually buy it just for the functional benefit. And the first time when you buy it, there is a lot of doubt about, is this safe for my skin, my pet, my body, whatever it is. And the only way you can overcome that distrust is by building credibility. And that's what a Prada or a Lacoste or whoever does. So there's a basic premise that, okay, this t-shirt ain't going to fall apart, but there's more to it. I mean, you feel part of the whole story ecosystem when you just buy this little logo. And even your brands have to own that story, and that's how you're going to save money. Another example here is Fast Track, which is actually a very controversial message for the most part for India, right? Generally goes against what we would consider Indian family values, and yet they've been running this campaign for years because it clearly resonates with their target audience. And yet the parents are buying the brand for the most part, and it's okay. I mean, people feel a little bit cooler with Fast Track. Now, the thing is, functionally, sunglasses are sunglasses, whether you buy them from the fellow selling them to you at the traffic light or you buy a Fast Track, functionally, most glasses are pretty much the same. But what Fast Track has done is that you feel a little bit of a rebel when you're wearing a Fast Track singles, right? So you're upset with your boyfriend, oh, it resonates. You want to, go pow to your parents, wear Fast Track. So they've got a narrative going which you want to buy into. So the product itself is what it is, but you feel very cool wearing this product. And it wasn't always so, right? So Fast Track wasn't always a cool brand, but it has made itself a cool brand. So before I go into the theory of this, I'm going to stop and ask if there are any questions, comments, anything like that. And Supriya, if you have any questions, you can read them out as well.
All well. I think we can proceed. If there are any questions, we'll take it up in the next session. But what they asked, you've nearly answered.
Okay.
A little bit more on brand positioning. I think we'll touch upon that in the subsequent slide.
Okay, sorry, 1 second. I'm trying to get rid of my chat window. Hang on. Which I cannot. Sorry.
There's a specific question which just came up. How can a tech service brand create its own brand positioning or unique identity? I think it's not only for tech, but any service related brand creates its own brand positioning and unique identity. Whenever we touch upon the brand positioning aspect, I think it can answer across sectors and industries.
Great. So thank you for this question, and it is exactly appropriate to this slide. So I distinguish brands between core attributes and surround attributes, right? So we talked about a core brand is something that delivers a functional benefit. So your elements, we talk about, I bought a screwdriver and it basically helps me to do whatever. Or I buy a hammer and it helps me to put in a nail. That's the core functional attribute. But even in something like a hammer, you have a brand like, say, Stanley, and you want to use Stanley because when you use Stanley, or when your handyman walks in with Stanley, there is a certain respect about, he's a real craftsperson. He is a real, good handyman. So those attributes are now part of it. And even though the hammer is a hammer, you could basically use a stone and it would do the same thing. But I like to use fancy brand hammer because it signals who I am. Or, like I come in with, let's say, Bosch equipment or whatever, because I'm trying to signal to you that I am a professional, right? Now, in any product, there is core attributes, which are things that delivery process or quality or the customer benefit. That's a functional stuff. And then there is a vision, there is, the price, a country of origin, who owns this thing, what do they do for the community? What are the kind of returns that they bring? And that actually starts to build the story of the brand. So, for example, if you know that a particular product is from Italy versus India versus China, immediately your perception of this product would change. And the simplest example of this is water, where if I give it to you from the tap, you have a certain opinion about it. If I give it to you in a glass bottle, you have a certain opinion about it. But if I start telling you that this was from the Himalayas, now you have a different opinion about it. If I tell you that it was Himalayas, but I caught it from a spring at midnight, now, oh wow, that just seems so much better. The water may taste exactly the same and slake your thirst exactly the same, but you would pay me more for that water that was from the Himalayas at midnight from snowfall and blessed by a cheetah than you would for the same water just, from the tap. And that's the difference between the storytelling and the functional benefit. Specifically for tech services, yes, if you do exactly the same thing, we have to talk a lot more about the why. So if you can't differentiate on the what you do or the how you do, you have to differentiate on the why you do it. And again, going back to the examples that were given, um, you could say that, okay, what I do is I deliver, let's say, um, pet friendly products or whatever, right? So that's what I actually do. How I do it, I make it from fresh things, locally sourced products, and therefore it is purer, it is not sat in the box forever. So that's the how. But then I could talk about the why and say that, look, I really struggle to find high quality, locally made organic pet food for my dog. And I searched, I looked around, and there was nothing. So as a committed pet parent, I wanted to create this and make it available to others, right? So now when I say why, I have invoked more trust in me than when I was just selling pet food. Similarly, with tech services, you have to also understand what is the key functional benefit that people want. So you say it's undifferentiated. That's not true. So even if I just want a laptop fixed, yeah, I could say anyone could do it. But then if someone says 1 p.m. I will be at your house and they actually show up at 1, that's a big win for me because time is issue. If someone can say, look, I will return it within 3 hours promise. Oh, wow, that's another value add for me. If this company says, look, I struggled, my kid's laptop, essential for school, and it got damaged because I went to some random unbranded shop, so I am actually now affiliated and certified as Apple certified or Lenovo certified, etc. Plus I will be at your house exactly the time you tell me, and if I say 3 hours, I will deliver in 3 hours. Suddenly I'm a differentiated offering, not on the functional benefit, everybody can repair the laptop, but I am differentiating on surround services. Most people in the B2B context value punctuality and they value reliability, despite, you might say the actual thing is not differentiated. Let me give you an even simpler example. Like, there are many people in India who sell sand or ball bearings, which are essentially commodities. But even there, one person is better than the other. And the reason is that Mr. Singh, who sells sand, is more reliable than, Mrs. Kaur, who's selling sand. One day she did not deliver on time, and now I'm going to hold it against her. So anywhere that you feel you have an undifferentiated product, stop and think, can it be differentiated on the surround attributes? Now, this is something that I have a whole chapter in my book about, but this is the basic framework. Sorry. And a simple guideline for when you should do core versus surround. So if you have a truly unique offering and you have sufficient moat for your product, core is great. Surround is when you feel the offering is getting commoditized and you want to build up a barrier for that. If your product can be innovated constantly, yeah, core is fine. But if you're able to do marketing, then let's move to surround as quick as possible. If you're the first entrant in a product, in a category, you can be core. but you're not the first, but it's delivered unique differentially or has unique features. So if you take ID Foods, the product itself was not unique. People were doing this before them, but the way they delivered it is the unique part of it. Um, you can do a functional benefit if there's no emotional engagement or interaction, but the more I have an emotional attachment or it is important to me, I want the story because I need to trust you to do it right for me. And this is also where I could make it a part of your image, if I wanted to, right? So skincare, for example, is usually emotional, but once you start putting that same thing onto, say, pet care or children's food and so on, yes, of course, it affects my self-esteem. If I tell you that, you know what, there's so much of sugar in what you're feeding your child, it suddenly impacts my self-esteem, and I want to use a product that it has less sugar content in it. And I do want to say that jaggery is the same as sugar as far as that aspect goes, but the storytelling is far more unique. Um, if management is tightly focused on business, then again, product only is fine. But if you want to have a larger role in the industry and you're able to build your personal brand, then surround is also really good. And one of the questions that Supriya mentioned is, should a founder build a personal brand? Yes, of course. And typically, before you can afford to build your company brand, you can usually start with building your personal brand. So it is much cheaper to do so. And it also builds trust in the company because, and that is often why promoters put their own picture on the package, etc., because they're basically saying, look, I'm willing to sign on my products, so please trust me, that is not adulterated or any of that, right? It's a gimmick maybe, but it does tend to work, right? Today, someone was sharing a picture of Kinley water bottles, which have old pictures of Dhoni. And they were like, what does it exactly do for the brand? And you're like, okay, if I'm seeing a bunch of Bisleri lookalikes, but I see Dhoni on one, I do have a higher level of trust. It's like, okay, Dhoni's put his picture on that bottle. Maybe it's purer than the others, right? So there is that value. So I'm going to pause for a tiny bit. I do see questions and comments in the chat. So any follow-on Q&A or chat questions, you can put it in now. I'm just going to take a tiny pause and look at the chat window. Okay, brand question, fine. Let me go back. So the next question, when should I do marketing or branding was the question. So priorities typically for an organization ought to be mind share. So people should know about your product, then you can get market share, and then you can get profit share. Now, people say, hey, should I get funding or not? Of course, you can choose not to get funding, but mind share is typically long drawn and expensive. So if you are able to secure funding, it helps you with gaining mind share and not being in such a hurry to do profit share. So which is why most VC funded businesses tend to be not profitable, because they're working towards the day when they can, become profitable. It's a different story. That's a very long runway, but they're able to do it because they have the cushion.
Before we proceed,
Yeah.
there are some questions on branding, personal branding.
Yeah.
So Anushka Neol, she runs One Farm. She asked, quick question on personal branding. Would you suggest multiple platforms or stick to LinkedIn or Twitter?
So here is the problem. So it depends what's your audience, right? So if, let's say, who's your target audience? So if my users are all on LinkedIn, then I can go and build my brand on LinkedIn. But they may not be, and they may not see your post. So if you're spending money, then maybe they do. LinkedIn today is a very cluttered environment where most of the posts are really personal, right? So I commented yesterday, day before, on how My entire feed was full of people celebrating that their child has graduated from Harvard or MIT or one of those places. And it's just full of that, right? And there's now no professional context to it. And it just makes you feel bad that, your kid hasn't gone to the right school or college. And it leaves out the context entirely that, they paid for it. Now, in that environment, to build your personal brand on LinkedIn is quite tough. So you are going to have to look at local publications which people would actually read. So your local publication, online properties, but narrow. So it has to be, um, also the truth today is that even if I win an award, like even if like I win a national award, right? I get a Padma Shri or whatever. The only way my users would know about it is if I were to put it in my sales material, and that's the truth. You can, like, I bet all of you cannot name all the winners of the national awards this year. When you see it, you'll be like, oh wow, so and so is Padma Shri, but you wouldn't just know offhand who it was. So to answer your question simply, what are the channels is whatever channels your audience watches. Um, your cheapest model is if you're able to reach out to your audience, either through email or WhatsApp. And that is really the holy grail of marketing today, which is to get permission to be in touch with your prospects and users. And for that, you will have to invest in content that is relevant and useful to them. So if I have beauty tips, then people might subscribe to it. If I'm happy with your product, I probably am okay to try it out a bit. And if I'm able to do a good job of that, I will continue. And then I can tell you that, oh, I just won this award. And then I have a straight route to use. So that's one. There's a question on, if we do not have any famous influencers, then what do we do for promotion? It's actually, I have my own views on influencers. I think we're confusing celebrities with influencers. Influencers usually have a smaller following. Celebrities, yes, they have a larger reach. So if you're looking at building mind share, the only way you can do it is by going viral. And I can talk a little bit about how you can go viral. But typically, I mean, in PR, we have a saying that if you talk about a dog biting a man or a woman, there's no story. But if you say, hey, the woman bit the dog, there's an amazing story. So you have to do something contrary, otherwise you're not going to go viral, right? So if I just tell you that, again, I just tell you that my food is good for you, okay, whether you're a children's food or you're a dog food, whatever, there's no story in that. But if I tell you that, did you know that all cereals contain 90% sugar? Take a look at the ingredients here. Oh, now I have a story. Now media wants to talk to me, right? So you have to create a controversy if you don't have an influencer and if you don't have a budget for an influencer. Second suggestion is you become the influencer yourself, which is even cheaper, right? Yep, the whole truth would be that example, but not yet as controversial as they could be. So yeah, sure. Should I go back? Any other questions?
Two more questions. Right product at the right time helps build brand strategy, or the right product is enough for the brand strategy? So is there a timing also linked to building your strategy, or is a product enough for it?
So again, coming back to the core versus surround, you might think it's a right product at the right time, but that doesn't mean that the audience thinks so. So that is actually the biggest challenge. So if you look at, say, Freshworks, which is in your space and which had an interesting launch, he saw a market opportunity and he quit his previous firm, which is in a similar space, and launched it, right? Now, the reason that Freshworks did incredibly well was they went viral because they kept targeting the competition. So he was not afraid of throwing pot shots at the others and saying they suck and I'm so good. So the right product is always a very qualitative choice. I mean, you might say right product and I might say whatever. But if you have done your research and you believe there is a market for it, then that is the right time. But no product is going to sell on its own because, like I said, if nobody has heard of you, how will they buy you? So read the Freshworks case studies. They actually put out a ton of very, very useful SaaS marketing stuff on their website, very detailed how to do it. And they also run this whole platform called SaaS Boomi, where also they actually teach pretty well. But the fact is that you need mind share. So if you believe you have the right product, you will have to find a way to communicate to those users. In your case, possibly LinkedIn will work. But even on LinkedIn, if you're just saying, hey, my product is awesome, nobody cares. You'll have to start with the other stuff is all lousy, and that's why you need to have me, right? There's a question on how do you suggest branding a niche product? You'll have to give me a little bit of explanation as to what is a niche product for you. Because today, with a long tail, every D2C product could be called niche. So there was a time when, you had hair oil, and now you have hair oil for thinning hair oil for gray hair oil for the summer, hair oil for the winter, hair oil for curly hair oil for doggy hair, whatever, right? So how niche is something you'll have to tell me. I'll come back to you when we come back to the next round of questions. Okay, I'm going back to this. So this is a simple framework that is useful for branding. It's as easy as ABCD. And what you should do after this session is to describe your brand in these terms. So A is what is the added value? So when we talk about the right product, this is the added value. What need are you fulfilling in the market? What is the empty space that you have identified that you are filling? So this could be that, people had to pay a whole year for a contract. Now you have a SaaS model, or previous stuff was unauthentic and mine is authentic, or mine makes you more beautiful. Whatever you say is your added value. B is super important. It's a behavioral change required to use it. And this pops up as your single biggest problem. Now, you might say that what I've been doing for the last 20 years is a bad choice, but it's not so easy to get me to believe that. So all of you have seen people who continue to use outdated phones or outdated products. Like Brill Cream still sells, even though you have all these fancy options. People still do a lot of things that you don't need to do. People still wear a watch, which frankly, there's no need to anymore. But the reason is that behavioral change is the hardest thing. If I have a habit, I don't like to change it. It's difficult for me. So the easiest way to get adoption is to minimize the change that I have to make. And so, it's hard to change someone from, a easier way to a harder way, but from harder way to easier way is obviously better, which is why, let's say, a Maggie sells like crazy, because a behavioral change was, you had to make your handmade, nice, healthy food. And now here's something you can make in 2 minutes. So the behavioral change was reasonably easy. Even they struggled because the average mother felt this was a tad unhealthy. And so they suggested that you throw in some chopped carrots, etc., as a garnish and make it healthy. So that was a marketing ploy that they used. C is a complexity. How, again, Maggie is an excellent example. Can I explain it to you in 2 minutes as to why this thing is so awesome for you? And 2 minutes now is too long, maybe 30 seconds. Can you tell me why your product is so awesome? By the way, for those of you who are fond of LinkedIn, we did a project for a client where they found that roughly 7 seconds is the attention span for a message on LinkedIn. D is diffusion. And this is a super important one, which is how do you get your users to share information about the fact that they're using your product, right? Now, if you look at one of the classic examples, it's like iPhone, where it says, oh, this message was sent from iOS or whatever. Yahoo used to have this thing that this message, whatever, Yahoo, do you get your own something at somewhere? So all digital tools try to put that in. If you look at any brand, again, it's the same thing. So I see this logo on somebody and they're cool. So, hey, I would like to have this logo and show I'm cool. Soon you see that everybody's wearing the same logo, so that helps. There are conscious examples as well. So for example, the Apple was the first to launch the white headphones because in those days, everything else was black. And they thought about it and said that the iPod sits in your pocket and that's its big value. So how does anyone know that you're using the iPod? So that's why you need to have something distinguishing. And it got to the point where people just bought white headphones just to show that they had something like it, even if they didn't have the iPod and it was fake. So this is the basic ABCD model. So here is a super important bit. What is it that you and only you bring to the customer? Now, what you choose here is make or break for your business. Identifying what is it that you do clearly, and secondly, being relevant to the customer in that context, right? So before Indigo, planes talked about how comfortable they were, the amazing food they offered, blah, blah, blah. But only Indigo found out the right thing, which is being on time is all the customer cared about. Uber only talked about the convenience, and that's what was important to the customer, and which is why Uber is able to weather security, weather bad usage of his drivers, weathering everything because it delivers the one thing the person wants, which is convenience. Bata delivers long lasting. And it's actually a bit of a cross for Bata because I think they would like to be seen as modern trendy, but because you have used Bata school shoes forever, in your mind it is stuck as long lasting. Apple stands for design, intuitive design, and that's all that matters to the customer. You know that it's a simple product to use, and that's what matters. I'm going to pause because I see a couple of questions. Or Supriya, do you want me to just continue and come back?
You could continue. We'll probably complete the ABCD and then move on to questions.
Okay,
further.
sure. So B is behavioral change. Again, like I said, given sufficient reason, I can change my behavior, but I would not like to if I can. And how one metric which not many businesses measure is how easy is it to interact? Are you a habit? So you talk about SaaS, where of course you want it to be as easy as possible to renew despite RBI guidelines. But even something like pet food, can you convince someone to sign a subscription model for it? Right? So you say that, hey, how big is your dog? How many meals does it have? And we recommend that you feed this doggy, one bag of this stuff every month. So if you sign up now for 12 packages of this thing, hey, you get a discount or you get a free bowl or whatever it is. Suddenly it has become a habit rather than a monthly purchase decision. Amazon tries also very hard to put things in the pantry as a repeatable thing. Because they just want to make it super easy for you to be able to reorder this, right? Even simple things like if I have an indicator in my package that you're running low, time to reorder, set an alert, any of these things, WhatsApp alert saying, hey, you bought from us a month ago, would you not like to order again? What happened? So any of those things start to trigger movement towards that. If any of you have apps on your phone like Nike, if you run 3 days at the same time, it'll start triggering you. It's time for a run. Are we running today? Start sneakily asking you these things. It's very polite, very sweet, but it does nudge you towards sticking to a habit, right? And anything can have that. So beauty products, if I can build you into my routine, then you have a higher, thing. Apps, again, people generally drop it within 7 days to 14 days. So how do I make it stickiest in the 7 to 14 days? UI, UX. How do I make it so easy, so sticky, so useful that you don't give it up after you have downloaded it? Complexity, the customer is not a moron. It's a famous David Ogilvy saying, but we would like to be. And iconic brands simplify things, even really difficult things. So this is UI, UX plus explaining things to me. And you have to really think through how simple can I make it? Because today there are just so many choices that people like me are like, okay, I don't want to process all this information. So just give me something, the simplest option you have. So you go to a coffee shop, there's so many choices, and you're like, okay, I'll just have the black coffee because I can't wrap my mind around all the choices that you're offering me. So how can you simplify it? Because when in marketing, when we talk about simplifying, it means that in less than 10 words, you can describe your product offering without the use of and. So that's a simple test that all of you can do, which is, why should someone buy you, without the use of the word and. So I am XYZ, I deliver this, that's it. And diffusion, how visible is the usage? How easy is it to share? Are you embracing social commerce and a social media sales channel? And this is true now for every type of product, but it's also like simple things like stickers. I mean, stickers is one of the best sales tools ever, because if people are willing to use your sticker, that's free marketing for you. And every time I use a product, um, my sticker is used somewhere, luggage stickers, labels, all of these are huge diffusion things. But then there's also member get member. So Uber's success was because they always have a discount code for you to offer your friend, but both of you start to get a discount. So if I'm not able to visibly advertise my usage of a product, then you have to look at ingredient brands like Intel and whatever, and how do they go about getting people to share that they were using this particular product. So there are lots of tools out there you can Google. What I would like you to remember is that diffusion is a big part of low cost sales. So you have to bake it into the system. Okay? So I'm going to pause now for questions. Let me just take a look at Q&A. How to viral my real estate project. So, well, okay. So viral is a nice thing to want. Viral is only if someone genuinely sees value in your project being unique. Specifically for real estate, I can give you a live example from my history, which is we had a launch of, we managed the launch of a 125-acre property in Bangalore called Bhartiya City. It was from a first-time developer, and it was in a slightly outside of town place in those days. And one of our challenges really was how to tell people where this Bhartiya City is, because you have to explain it is behind this and behind that or near somebody else, which we don't want to, right? So we were actually grappling with this whole thing. And then during that time, there were concerts in Bangalore. For those of you familiar, there's something called Palace Grounds, and Santana was supposed to perform there. And unfortunately, Palace Grounds, for legal dispute reasons, went unavailable. And we were like, okay, we have 125 acres. Would Santana like to perform here? And we found the team and offered and said, we'll clean up the property and put toilets. That's all we're going to do. But do you want it? And they were so happy that they took it. So we actually had Santana perform at our project, and they did the branding to say where it is because they wanted people to know where to come. And therefore we went viral. We did some other stuff, beautiful experience center, things like that. But see, virality or diffusion is only when I see value and want to share. Even if you get Amitabh Bachchan to talk about your real estate project, it will no longer go viral, because viral means word of mouth. So if Amitabh Bachchan is talking about your product, I mean, 10 people will talk about it, but not more than that. On the other hand, if you were to run a competition and say that, look, 10% of the apartments in my complex are kept for ex-Indian Army people, and these are subsidized, and you have to fill up a form and blah, 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 you have to do it. Suddenly your project might go viral, because you could always say that, you can choose to buy an apartment here and suggest that you would fund some of the housing for the Jawans, right? Now, that has a story aspect to it. So someone is doing good for society, and you're saying this because I want to have diversity, but I want to respect people who have defended my country. In a place like Punjab, something like that, that idea can go viral. And if you remember, Ola Cabs tried this, right? So they have a special program for ex-defense, and so they go to town with it. So if you want your project to go viral, my suggestion is, don't take a commercial look at it. Try to look at how is this benefiting society, how is it benefiting your consumers, and then you can go ahead and get it viral, because then media wants to talk about you, everybody wants to talk about you. They will not talk about a commercial project. So that's something to keep in mind. How can we create a brand association with NGOs in the development sector? Since the audience is not NGOs, well, if you're trying to do something with NGOs, I would imagine they're super happy because they want to get free stuff. So maybe I've not understood. Okay, as we are always advertising, sorry, I can't read that question. In service industry, what should be the social media strategy? You so my Bhartiya City client was never on Facebook. He refused, said that Facebook disproportionate amount of negative feedback will overshadow all the positive feedback, which actually was a good call. So I would actually stay away from mass media social today. I would definitely go to influencers if I could afford it and put up pictures, but I would not really allow commenting. I would probably do cute Instagram reels, etc. But not more than that. And if you're B2B, I would stick with LinkedIn and not go anywhere else. So that's one. Can you explain, Trigger, what is it that changes behavioral? So for example, if let's say that I'm a big fan of honey loops, and I am now hit with data from multiple points showing that honey loops has high linkage towards type 1 diabetes for kids. That would be a trigger which would make me go looking for cereal without sugar in it, right? So usually a trigger is a big change that I'm willing to make because it's sufficiently explained to me. So if you look at COVID, that's a trigger, right? I mean, work from home was never, it was always considered a big luxury, but big trigger, and therefore behavioral pattern has changed. I personally never use conditioners until someone said, "Oh, this will make your hair super soft." They give you a trial, and then you start using that. In terms of B2B products, SaaS products, it's a trial. So first is they find you at the right spot, saying, "Hey, you're struggling with this. Why don't you try Slack or whatever?" Then they say, "Why don't you try it for free?" Then during the trial period, it's like intense bombardment, saying, "This is so awesome. This is so awesome." And if you're able to convert me and make me hang on to me for 30 days, then I will pay the money and stay with you. So then there is a change for behavior. So depending on how dramatic the change is, you can choose how long that behavioral change has to be. I can tell you my running journey. I had never run before. It took me 3 months with an app to actually get used to running, and then it became a part of behavior. Now I feel awkward if I don't run that day, but that's 18 months later. So that's I'm about to do a startup of green chili powder. What kind of branding should I do? You should do surround, because product is easily replicable. You can choose various platforms. Are you going to go the health route? Are you going to go the origin route? And why green chili versus red chili? Go after the recipe sites, the instant pot sites, all of those guys. They are your biggest influencers. And if you can get some nice Instagram videos with influencers cooking with green chili rather than red chili, that might work for you. We are an NGO and we want to create branding for ourselves. You have to stand out. NGO is a very, very crowded space. You would have to make me feel good about myself in order to stand out there. Again, the NGOs that succeed are those that offer volunteer opportunities, but that's a different piece altogether. But for NGOs, the why is super important and the progress is super important. So when I contribute to an NGO, I want to see instant reactions. So that's why World Vision does well regardless. Basically, if I feel and I get an indicator or Kiva, any of those sites where I get instant, the goal has been met, then I want to do. Where I can't see an instant goal, we like instant gratification, right? Okay. How can we market? Okay, turmeric latte, ragi malt for adults. So again, like I said, you cannot go viral on a small budget unless you are negative. So think about it. Okay, so I actually switched off all milk product additives after researching and finding that plain old milk is the primary objective, like the value that you get from, say, a Bonvita. It just makes it more palatable to drink. So if you're able to provide that kind of content, then you can cause a switch. And the storytelling is super important. So today it is about being authentic. So please explain, why are you doing this alternative to bone vita? Because bone vita is a habit and you want to break the habit. So one is, if the kid really likes it, then of course I will change my behavior. But the other is, if the parents get scared saying that, you're feeding your child so much sugar, which was that old, you're eating maida in the name of biscuits. So hey, I have whole wheat biscuit, which is healthier. Let us not argue that biscuits itself are unhealthy, but let's talk about that. So form is another thing that kids like. So there were these straw type things that you could just suck your stuff through. That was very popular at some point. So you have to go through the usual 4 Ps and figure out, why should the decision maker buy your product over Bonvita, which they have probably grown up drinking. Why is it now wrong that, because they would say, but this was a one treat in our house. Problem now is the child has multiple treats in the day, which are all sugary. Therefore, let us stop that. So maybe you go on a campaign against type 1 diabetes, or, whatever it is, right? With the 4 Ps or the 6? No, 4 Ps: price, product, place, promotion. You can Google it, but any one of these could be your differentiator. The reason I don't talk about 4Ps much is because most people have tried that, which is why I prefer to go with the ABCD option, because this is a different lens to look at what you already have. NGO that is selling handcrafted bags, basis natural skills and talents. So any product, you have to find the niche. Now, when you say selling handcrafted bags and home accessories, you have to figure out what is the value that it brings. And sorry to be harsh, but a lot of NGOs, the main thing they talk about is it's handcrafted by women who have no other source of income. When I position it like that, it becomes charity. But somebody like, let's say, Fab India also goes to artisans and also gets the stuff. But they don't position it that it's a charitable thing. It is, yeah, we're sourcing ethically, but it's really good stuff. So you have to choose that and connect with the heritage. So, for example, if you're selling, say, dupattas, which are hand embroidered and so on, I might look at personalization, like where they actually write their name and say that. But I might also say that, 100-hour dupatta, and say that this took someone 100 hours to make. And this is something we always forget to mention, because, like, I have bought Kanta sarees and all that. And Calcutta Airport has a shop, and they actually told me, ma'am, you should. So during COVID, they were really desperate, they were very sweet. They said, look, there's this quilt, it's 17,000 bucks. It's actually worth much more. But, the artisan actually has spent 6 months doing it. It would be really nice, since you can afford it, can't you buy this quilt instead of the cheaper one? So I did buy it, but I had never really thought about it from someone spending 6 months hand embroidering this thing. And if you sold it as a 6-month quilt, I would ask you a question, what do you mean by 6-month quilt? And then you would show me pictures of how this takes so long and how each step and blah, blah, blah. Suddenly, there's a huge story, and I want to give you money because 6 months somebody has spent. I mean, you really want to pay for it. So I think you have to look at the framing that it's not, I mean, I don't buy the bag just to empower rural women, but I buy it because I feel better. It helps my self-esteem that I'm carrying this handcrafted with love kind of thing. So if their name is on it, if it says how many hours they spent on it, 100-hour bags is a huge story. Okay. How important reels are when you're in the fashion industry? I would imagine super, super important. Instagram reels, again, depends on your audience. If I'm your audience, then it doesn't work. But if you're looking at a younger audience, then definitely reels, any video format would be super important today, based on where your audience is consuming their fashion advice. Also remember that it's a hugely long tail. So for every niche product today, there's a counter audience which would love your product. So I'm always surprised that, counterculture and how big it is today. So if you can't get the mainstream culture, go after the 20% that is non-mainstream and say that, look, they're all wearing mass manufactured stuff, but hey, I have hand sewn, hand whatever. So you have to look at the Billie Eilish angle, right? So everybody's doing something, I do something totally different. And that's the way to stand out, go viral, diffusion, all of that. Okay, 3 new messages. Okay, I can't give individual consulting advice. You'll have to go with the frameworks. Okay, the reason I don't want to do too much with individual questions or products is that then it gets a little boring for the other people. So I will give you one more framework, which is the branding house. You should write down who am I, which is again, like I said, simplest possible with no ands. Second question is why should someone buy you? Third question is why should I buy you and not somebody else? If you have clarity on these 3 questions, then your marketing cost will go down, because otherwise you're wasting a lot of energy babbling about various things. So if you're in the fashion space, explain why should someone buy this thing and why should they not buy from all the other people who are hanging around. So like I said, if you told me that this dupatta is hand embroidered, yeah, okay, that's nice. Might appeal, but if you told me that it is the only dupatta which are 100 hours of work, suddenly I feel special and I would not buy any other dupatta. And I would start asking the question of how many hours did someone spend on this, right? Who made it? So that starts to matter. There was one about origin of, let's say, the wheat. So that's an amazing surround story where if you tell me that this farmer in this farm made this wheat, functional is all same. I mean, wheat finally produces a cake or whatever, that's fine. But I feel better about having this cake, which is from my hometown, made with something which is hand, whatever. I mean, the storytelling matters, but you really need to be able to answer why not by someone else. When I do consulting engagements, this is actually where we get stuck. Why by me? Most people can say I give great value, I am different, whatever. But why should you not buy that other product which I'm currently using or whatever? That is a big challenge to answer. You should do this exercise because when we talk of virality, when we talk of standing out, this is the actual answer, right? I'm the best at, or I'm the only, or I'm the fastest, I'm the cheapest, something, because you need to have one of these superlative sentences for your product or service. Otherwise, you don't have a differentiator and you're a commodity. Then you go look at the story as well, right? In this case, a niche is fine because whatever it takes, you have to be the only, the best, the fastest. So you might say that I am the fastest in Punjab, or I'm the best at something available to you in Punjab. You have to work out a niche which works for you. So that framing of knowing what you're the best at or the fastest, that's what's going to help you go viral, right? So if you look at D2C brands, the successful ones have gone after very small niches. So it's like, I am the only whatever for curly hair, for example. I am the only makeup line for darker skinned people. I am the only, whatever for this very niche problem that you have. So I have to define my target audience as small as I can, and be the best or whatever is it at that. And then, of course, you'll have to build your story by winning awards and getting credentials and testimonial videos and everything along that parameter. But for most of your questions, this is actually the answer. You need to have the answer to this one. What is that superlative that you are going to own? People talked about how will I go viral. So virality is nothing but OMG content. So you have to go, oh my God, when I say it. You need to have the appetite. You need to have the strength to manage the controversies. If you wonder why do brands get into controversies, it is precisely because they wanted to go viral. Sometimes it pans out, sometimes it does not. This is a simple 2x2 matrix that I had created some time ago. Where social acceptance is high and novelty is high, you are likely to go viral without a backlash. Where acceptance is low, novelty is high, you will go viral, but maybe you will have backlash. And things that are low on both fronts are nice to talk about, but there's no real virality potential there. So this is a simple checklist, but Fast Track, for example, did a lot of these. The ones in green you could consider, if it's relevant to your thing, of course, right? But any of these executed in a slightly controversial way is what is going to get you viral. So I really don't know from a real estate perspective how you're going to put this in, except if, like I said, you look at, if the woman is a primary buyer, then I have a separate campaign. Those kind of things still work, right? So you say that I'm helping women become financially independent, and therefore I have a special whatever offer for women buyers. I don't know. I don't think anybody's tried it. And yet women are huge decision makers in real estate purchases. So maybe you could give it a shot. So maybe you say I'm an inclusive apartment. Don't know how that's going to work for you. Anything like that, right? After this, I will pause because I'm at my FAQ. So there were questions about how much should be my budget, should be marketing. As much as possible. Product companies generally spend 10 to 25% of their revenue or projected revenue into marketing. Services firms is much lower. Between 1 to 10% is really what they do, as much as they can afford. Of course, if you're funded, then, hey, as much as you can afford. When is the right time to do marketing? Common policy is that I'll get my product right, I'll get everything right. But actually, you have to do marketing in parallel right from the time you start your launch. Peter Drucker always said there's just product and innovation, so you have to work on that. If you're operating on a shoestring, what can I do? Focus on the content and its distribution, invest time instead of money. You have to create standout content, but you're going to have to make it yourself. So if you can't afford an influencer, you have to be the influencer, right? So if you're in beauty products, can't afford an influencer, figure out how you're going to start your podcast on natural Indian remedies, go to IVM podcast, get your show going. That's basically the simple answer to that one. And so quick tips: information is insight, be different, use controversies, personal touch. An example, 1957, there was a Swiss spaghetti harvest on BBC Panorama. And this is kind of the start of spaghetti becoming popular in the UK. It was so new at the time that people actually called in and said, where do I buy a spaghetti tree? And there was a lot of interest created. And it was just a fun thing by BBC, but actually this is how spaghetti became a big deal in the UK. So I'm going to now stop my presentation and come to you for any questions you may still have. Okay, as you mentioned earlier, you need to focus on one product. We're a software company, which product we need to market. So you don't have to focus on one product, but you have to have a constant theme across all these. Actually, I mean, unless you're a really large company, you shouldn't have so many products. So you would have to decide, or you would say that I am a one-stop shop for SMB companies, or if you're a 25 crore company, you should come to me for all IT solutions, right? I'll come in one-stop shop. So I think maybe that's the best bet to position yourself and say company in a box. You can go digital in a box, 25 lakhs, and I will take care of everything for you. I think that would fly for a lot of smaller organizations. Second question, does controversy help in boosting brands? Oh, of course they do. It always helps, because then I get mind share. So is it that niche controversy works like the fashion industry? Yeah, I mean, whatever appeals to your audience, right? So for example, bikini may be old news in one country, one target audience. But if I say bikini top in another audience, another country, it could be a good controversy, right? So crop tops, H&M is desperately trying to make it mainstream. It depends. It's mainstream in some countries. In other countries, it is considered a controversy. So it's up to them. How beneficial are podcasts? So podcasts are rising in popularity, but it is with a certain audience. It would be generally young commuters who seem to be big fans of podcasts. General consumption are those who are on a treadmill or on a long commute. Um, so if you are able to get the audience, it's not bad. Um, it's also low cost, so it's pretty good to start trying those. Um, and it's even a branded podcast is not that much, it's like 1.5 lakh per episode. So it's a good low cost thing to try. But if you're targeting a B2B audience, I don't think the Indian podcasts have that huge a share. Like in, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it is rising, so it's worth it. Video seems to do well, so you could do a video podcast so that they can just listen audio if they want to. I think that would work. um, I want to do exports of green chili powder. How should I do marketing in other countries? That is depends who your target audience is. If you're targeting the Indian audience, then there's standard routes. There are the Indian channels, the Indian publications. So you would probably do it there. But I think distribution would be a bigger challenge for you right now than the actual marketing. If you're a B2B industry, recruitment, what's your social media strategy? Again, it's to get attention. So crowded space, the only way you're going to get attention is by making provocative comments on LinkedIn. So maybe you need to do that. And honestly, right now, only Instagram and LinkedIn seem to be flying in this target audience. So maybe you need to consider those. Nothing else is really working. What motivates psychologically to communities to connect? It's a problem. So I, for example, use Facebook communities only when I have a problem. I generally go off Facebook when I don't have a problem. Then when I have a problem, I go into communities to solve them. And then when the problem is solved, I come away from the community. So if someone, for example, has just adopted a dog, you will find them hanging around every WhatsApp and Facebook community about dogs. Once they have settled in with the dog, then they tend to withdraw from those. Very few people contribute to the extent that they take away from the community. So if you're looking for a user group, it tends to work when I have a common problem. So for example, school groups function because generally they have some problem or the other. So parenting groups tend to be more active, but even there people come in when they have a specific issue and go away when that issue is solved. There are no open questions. And difference between content strategy and content marketing. Strategy is basically the why are you doing whatever you want to do and how are you going to do it. Content marketing is just the engine that churns out content. How important is it to have a logo? Unless you're an app today, it really doesn't matter much. I wouldn't waste much money on it. If you're a B2C product, it matters to have great packaging, not so much logo. But if you're an app, it should be visible, easy to find. But then we're talking the whole app design, not just a logo anymore. And this is the school management software to schools. That's an interesting one because I know a number of people who do this. Your best bet is to have controversy and talk about revenue leakage and retention, because see, the thing is, you have to identify the pain point. And often school management, till you show up with a software, is done by one uncle who is sitting somewhere doing it. So unless you make him look bad, I don't know if schools are that keen. On the other hand, parents like it, um, depending on which software and whatever. So you have to again come up with the controversy or the need that the person has. So if it's not a need, if they're not searching for it, how would you stand out? So again, come to the differentiator and say, so for example, if you have, let's say, Hindi version, or you offer audio, any of those things becomes a standout. So if you're able to say, I'm the only whatever. So recently, I think it was Axis Bank which launched ATMs, which also offer Sanskrit. Personally, I think it has zero functional value because who's going to use an ATM and want Sanskrit? From a story perspective, it's not a bad idea. I support every Indian language, including Sanskrit. They got a lot of virality. So it stood out. I remembered. I mean, I didn't think it was a great idea, but yeah, it's fun. So do you have a Punjabi option? I don't know. Maybe nobody will use it, which will stand out, right? How would you broadly define go-to-market strategy? You can Google that. Broadly, it would be who's my market and who's my target audience within that, and what messaging or product offering is going to work for them, and how will I communicate this messaging to them? What? Sorry, we have a IELTS matrimony problem. What is that? Sorry, I don't understand.
I'll just bridge that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll just bridge that for you. So IELTS basically a program or a test you have to give in terms of scoring, right? You have TOEFL, IELTS.
Yeah, yeah,
Probably
yeah,
this
yeah.
is this is the exam. So this is one of the startups based out of Punjab. They're basically a matrimonial app, almost like how on the lines of Shadi.com and Bharat
Hmm.
Matrimony, etc. But what they're doing is they're trying to connect through IELTS scores as well, like a matchmaking basis that, because a lot of people potentially are getting married to settle outside, and they're kind of finding the right match on that way. So it's a pretty unique idea. And there is some bit of marketing, but it's very niche in a segment, but very relevant to rural Punjab and places where it's being targeted right now, because a lot of audiences do get, either they get married and they go there, or they apply for it and then they settle there and get married. So there's a whole Canadian immigration, which is a
Hmm.
big market in Punjab. So
Hmm.
this is a product which is there for setting up a matrimonial link to that. One of the USPs of the app is such. So I think the
So
question is
here's what
related
I
to
would do. I mean, I would have fun with an app like this, and I would probably do a roadshow and say Canada and Punjab, and invite people, and we will do the test on the spot for you, as in, and you'll score badly, and then you sign up for my program and do whatever, or you'll do well and you'll sign up. But if I wanted attention, I would probably build a temporary Canada and Punjab story. It's not very hard. Do you want to go to Canada? Come. And you probably get a tie-up with the Canadian embassy, everybody to do the show as well.
Yeah, I think tie up with a lot of these immigration consultancies, because they're a low hanging fruit for them, where they
Yeah, but
already
I'm
have a
just
tap
saying that
audience.
you wouldn't be selling. You would just say, do you want to experience Canadian culture? And so you come in and I will give you some Canadian food and I will do something. And, there'll be one small room which will be at minus whatever degrees. So you can experience the cold. We'll teach you whatever. I mean, I'm just saying it would be pretty cool and people would come. Not just your target audience, but you would go viral. And you would have
Sure.
the Canadian influencer. I've forgotten that lady. There's a fancy one. Lily Singh. She could give advice.
Would you want to touch upon on how one can target a different audience segment? So there are a couple of questions which has come in saying, what can your, I mean, in terms of position, it can completely vary in terms of positioning product and how you're targeting as well. But from an 18 to 28 to a 40 to 60, I think a lot of brands targeting for senior citizens itself have a very different positioning itself. They might be targeting a dual audience, and I'm just thinking this loud. I'm sure you can give relevant examples, but senior citizen care are actually they target a dual segment. One, of course, the people they're catering to. Second, the families who are concerned about it. So your take on something like that, on how do you target a
So,
dual audience?
so it doesn't matter. Your message cannot be different. So the USP that you have is the same for everyone. So if you say that, okay, I'm the kindest care, or I'm the only one offering you vegetarian food or whatever, I mean, whatever is your USP, um, and in this trust matters and credibility matters. So the questions that a potential child has are different from that which the potential parent has. So the content you have will change based on that. So for example, if I were to run a testimonial campaign, I would show testimonials from kids to kids, and I would show testimonials from parents to parents. So that differentiation obviously I would do. But fundamentally my product is the same, right? I mean, what is the added value that I bring? Why should you choose me over somebody else? Those questions cannot change. The wording will change. So there is no way you're going to have two different messaging. Now, the bells and whistles that you choose to highlight, so look at the difference, right? I mean, everybody now offers a certain thing, but people really look for referrals. So you need to have a WhatsApp community and maybe trust, to put people into a WhatsApp community. You need to have tours, you need to have videos, you need to have a bunch of things to build trust and credibility. And maybe you get a certification going to show that you are genuine, and get videos and whatever. I mean, I would look really at building credibility for both of these audiences separately. So both the child is happy and the parent is happy, and how are you going to prove that they are happy is really the question.
Sure. Thank you, Jessie. There's one more question, and I mean, I'm trying to club in 2, 3 questions which are coming across. So there is someone who's doing, personalized steel kada business in Punjab.
Yes.
It's almost like
Yeah.
handicraft. They have a question.
Sorry.
Sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
So I'm saying, of course, apart from media, which we'll address later, but my question for this would be, for a owned asset versus a marketplace or not your own asset, would you have a content strategy? Should it be different, or should it be
So
unified? What is your take on
So
that?
here's the thing. Okay, so I'm on the board of a hotel chain which has 50, 60 hotels. We have the same problem. So fact is, a lot of the B2C sales comes from Make My Trip or any of the online travel aggregators. The advantage of going there is that the person who's coming in has a buying intent. So typically your conversion is high because I come looking for a gift, personalized gift or a kada. I'm searching for the right thing. So that's always your trade-off. Now the downside is, of course, that there is no next time when he comes, they will show some other product and they don't have to buy yours. So how you're getting loyalty is really the issue. Now, if I want to have a direct sales brand, you will have to spend a lot more on search. My experience in the hotel industry is that if a keyword is desired by Make My Trip or Booking.com, it's absurdly expensive for a single brand to try to bid on that same keyword. So that is actually going to be your trouble. If Amazon likes to target the word kada, you will have to outbid Amazon, which is quite hard. So that's challenge one. Challenge two, I have credibility on Amazon with the return policy, right? So I don't know you as a brand. Therefore, I am happier to buy the kada on Amazon because I know if something goes wrong, I can get my money back. So until you're a larger brand, this problem will continue. What you can try to get around is in your packaging, try to get your product to go viral and say that, hey, if you order the next kada directly on my store, you will get something, or this is one half of the set. And if you order another one with the name on it, then you will get some discount. So you need to figure out a way in which there is an incentive for your existing customers to at least come to you. So, run promos during Rakhi, do something like that to make it more unique. I also thought that this product, like, I didn't see a moat. Like, if you're selling well on Amazon, I didn't see why another brand will not come and take over the space, because I didn't see a moat over there. So you need to look at the storytelling that makes your kada more authentic, better than the others.
Jesse, one more thing, and of course, that answers more on product and media specifically as well, in terms of how do you create product differentiation for people to know. And the second is, of course, you need to kind of spend on media on specific to kind of direct people to your website. But is there any take on having different content? That means on your website, you have something which is more differentiated or adding value rather than on a marketplace, so that when people come on a website, they actually find value. Is there anything like that which works for any, has
No, no.
worked for
So,
any?
see, content you will always have nicely on your marketplace. Like, again, I can tell you from the hotel industry, they will visit the website. There's no problem in visiting the website, looking at your rooms. They'll do everything. But finally, I feel safer and happier with Make My Trip to go convert my deal. So content is still required because you're still building the brand. I may not choose to buy your kada because, if you don't have a good website and all, I may not choose to buy it. So, but final transaction may still take place on the marketplace because the marketplace brings a certain value to the buyer, and that is mostly around the trust. I can see ratings of other buyers and so on. And honestly, it's very hard to overcome. I mean, not overcome, but to build your independent brand takes a fair bit more of money and effort and time. And if you're not willing to say that, look, I will stop selling on Amazon and my product is so powerful that you must come to my own site to buy. Yeah, when you're at that level, sure. But that is only when I have recall with my name. So otherwise, no. I mean, if you look at it, if I look at even big brands like, say, Unilever, obviously they don't want to sell on Nykaa or Amazon or any of those sites, right? They would love for you to come and buy on unilever.com. But the reality is that that's not working. And therefore, they have to sit on these OTAs which own you. So Tatas are desperate. They want Tata Chroma and they're trying very, very hard. But they're not willing to say that you cannot buy my stuff anywhere else. And that's because it's a business case, right? So you can try incentives. If you're in a low risk category, you can offer price incentive, but then that would backfire because if you're offering a price incentive to convert on your hosted store, then you might as well just do it cheaply on Amazon. I mean, why do that? Um, but your existing customers, once they have experienced and trusted your product, you should work very hard to get them to come and buy on your store. So to give you an example again from the hotel industry, so you might do your first booking through Make My Trip, but once you're in the hotel, I can come to you and say, sir, I see that you have booked by Make My Trip. Did you know we have a loyalty program? Next time you come book directly, I'll give you 10% off. Or if I'm an airline, I can tell you, look, you get more points if you book on my site. So you've flown me, why don't you just book directly next time? So existing customers should be your target. Okay, there's some questions from Pranay on how do I churn content marketing, promote it in a fun and informative manner? That is a question for your content. There are lots of people doing good content. So you need to see that and see what works for your audience. Like I said, the easiest thing is to make it stand out. And you probably need personal credibility as well, because otherwise, why should I listen to your advice on this, right? So today, if Rakesh Jhunjhunwala says anything, he doesn't have to be informative, fun, nothing. People just swallow it. So you may need to look at the credibility and why should they believe you. Otherwise, your better bet is to curate content where you send people a list of latest updates from the top. Today, information is easy to get. So can you do something that is insightful for me and simplifies it is probably what I would look for. You can also crowdsource and talk about other people's strategies and say, so and so, 25 years old, he tells us what he did, 3 tips that probably will get their attention.
Thanks, Jessie. I'll probably wrap it up with one last question from as a startup founder. If at what stage of my journey should I rope in an agency, for example, a branding agency, or should I hire someone in-house to manage this for us? So from a startup founder who's just setting up a team, how important it is to have an in-house resource versus an agency? If you can share your thoughts on that, probably.
So typically the founders that I have worked with, I've always told them that there is a huge shortage of marketing talent in India. We're growing like crazy, unicorns, CEOs, everybody's sprouting like crazy. But if you think about it, where are these excellent marketers coming from, right? Everybody wants someone with 10 years work ex. So if we are growing at an exponential rate, clearly the number of people with 10 years work ex who can be marketing heads is lesser than the number of new companies looking for them. And therefore, and plus, of course, we have a global, like online people will work for Google sitting in India and Google will pay them a ton of money. So all the best people have gone into those jobs. So the advice I generally give my the funded or not, sorry, non-funded companies is that you are really good at something and that's how you started this company. So if you're a programmer, you're a coder, you know how to identify a good coding team. If you're in the food space, cosmetic space, you know when someone is talking bullshit in that space. Marketing, if you yourself are not very thorough, you will not spot that this guy doesn't know anything until you have wasted a ton of money on his ideas. Therefore, the advice I generally give people is that until you can afford to hire a top-notch marketing person, your best bet is for you to handle marketing yourself. You outsource whatever work you were doing, which you understand better, to somebody, and you go and do marketing for yourself for a year. Now, whether you do that with a small team that you have hired or you want to outsource to an agency, marketing is so important that in the early stages of your company, you have to run it yourself. Because marketing is your largest discretionary spend as a startup. And imagine that you're paying 20 lakhs for your marketing head, and then he'll come and tell you that you have to pay for some influencer or something. If you get it wrong, you're down quite a bit of your revenue and you wasted a year.
Sure, Jesse. I'm sure a lot of the startups can resonate with that, and we look forward to that kind of trajectory, among the set audience, so that at one point of time we come back and there are many more insights.
So if you if you look at any of the Indian successful unicorns, they do the marketing themselves. First few years, they handled marketing. The CEOs were running marketing.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Jesse. I'd like to kind of a token of thanks and the time you've kind of spent, also with the kind of questions which have come up have totally resonate with the kind of engagement we've had over the session. For all the participants, we will be sharing a recording of this shortly on our YouTube channel. The link of it has been shared, and we will keep you posted on our next masterclass. And we will also share an official coordinate for Ms. Jessie Paul in case anyone is interested in terms of understanding, what Paul Writer, her organization does, and then we can take it forward accordingly.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a nice day.